Microphones are off.
Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to the People and Culture Essentials videocast. I'm Jonathan, I'm the coordinator at the PCA or the People and Culture Association, and we are so excited to be back with the PACE videocast. It's November already, but we are excited about this because we are kickstarting November again with Sherie Holding, who's our guest on the PACE videocast. Of course, at the PCA, we are very, very excited and leading on to next year's International People and Culture Week, which will be held in the month of May 2024. And as we build up to that, we are very, very committed to putting the spotlight on people and culture practitioners and ambassadors out there. So if you are someone who's really making it work as a people and culture professional, do drop us a line and we will try and reach out to you and get you on one of our video casts. But today, it's all about Sherie Holding, who's the People and Culture Director at Pancreatic Cancer the UK. She has held different roles before getting into this position. Of course, she was with St. John Ambulance for around 6 years as an HR business partner, leading the community operations. Before that, of course, she was HR director with Western Union Business Solutions. But it's interesting because she brings a new perspective to this, being a people director at a charity. We're really interested to see the work she's doing there. And of course, she's going to be speaking to David Liddle, who is the CEO and founder of the TCM Group and the president of the PCA. His latest book, of course, the second edition of Managing Conflict, is now out. So if those of you have not got your hands on that one, do look out for that as well. I'll be dropping in more information with regards to how you can be a bigger part of the PCA and how you can join us as a member, both individually and as a corporate partner. So look out for that kicker at the bottom of your screen. But without wasting any more time, I'm going to hand over the virtual mic and the virtual stage to David and Sherie. The stage is all yours.
Jonathan, amazing. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Welcome, everyone, to today's People and Culture Essentials videocast, and particular welcome, Sherie, to yourself. A very warm welcome.
Thank you, David. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Likewise, looking forward to the conversation, Sherie. So we'll kind of get started, really. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your journey into this amazing world of people and culture, and talk us through kind of how you've kind of got to this point of being a people and culture director.
Yeah, sure. You sent me a sort of a biop, and it sort of jogged my memory about how long I've been doing this work. I still feel a little bit of a spring chicken, but actually I've been doing it for a long time, and I sort of fell into this world by doing lots of different roles, and so had a real sort of upbringing of knowing organization first before sort of moving into the sort of people space, which I felt really helped me to understand how you can bring sort of the people aspect into organizational view. So I had quite a long and varied career. How I've ended up in this role is I was looking for something that actually gave me the opportunity to sort of stretch and flex my muscles a little bit more than the role that I was in before. And also they were looking for someone that would come in and do something different in the organisation for Pancreatic Cancer UK. So come in with a fairly new and different approach to delivering sort of the people-related activities and driving change culture through that organisation. So I guess that, I'm trying to keep it quite snappy and concise.
Yeah,
so feel free to ask any questions.
That's amazing. I mean, I'd love to know more about the work of Pancreatic Cancer UK. I've lost a close family friend to pancreatic cancer. Can you tell us a little bit more about the organisation and the work that you do, Sherie?
Yeah, sure. So a really, as with every charity, they're a really, really valuable and important cause. Pancreatic cancer is often not spotlighted in comparison to other cancers, unfortunately, but it is one of the most prolific killers in the cancer world. And there's a real sadness with pancreatic cancer that often it's not diagnosed very easily or very quickly. Once it's diagnosed, there's very limited treatments and people don't get into treatment quick enough, and there's a not much time for those people that are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer to spend with their families and loved ones. And so what we do at Pancreatic Cancer UK is campaign to give more time to people. So we have a campaign going on at the moment called Don't Write Me Off. It's to give more time to people so that people get diagnosed earlier, better diagnosis and better treatment. There are better treatments for people, and actually the time that people have is a better quality of time as well. So we do all those things. So we offer services, we offer support, and we offer information to those people.
Amazing. If people want to find out more about the amazing work you do, is there a website that they can go
Yeah,
to?
we do have it's pancreaticcancer.co.uk. So it's all there. You'll find us really easily. And there's a plethora of information on our website, lots of leaflets, booklets to support people going through pancreatic cancer and their families as well. And if you want to donate and fundraise for us, there's also information on there to tell you how to do that too.
That's amazing. We'll put that link up on the PCA website. We'll also share that here if anyone wants to find out more. Sherie, that's amazing. Thank you. So charities, people always, I guess, that might have a somewhat stereotypical view of charities doing good, values-based work. And why would they need a people and culture function when we're all nice to each other, we treat each other well, deliver our values, we live our values? What are some of the people and culture challenges that you face or on a day-to-day basis? And is that stereotypical view correct? And what sort of challenges and work do you do on a day-to-day basis in a large charity?
Sure. So some of that, of course, is true. People, there are many reasons why people choose to work for charities, and it sort of combines a vocation and a career choice for most people. And you know, the dedication to the cause, the delivery of doing something different, and the ability to make a difference to other people is all part of that sort of motivation. You know, but people are still people, and it doesn't really matter what organization you work for. You'll get people who've got different motivations and different agendas for working, and so some of the same principles and the same challenges and benefits replicate themselves in the charity world. And I think this sort of stereotypical view of people in the charities are they're a bit martyrs, and they do things, you know, because they're just really great people. Yes, of course they are, but you still have to compensate people fairly. You still have to care for people. You still have to worry about people's well-being and support them properly. You don't expect people to do that without the impact of all the other things that surround people in their day-to-day life. And certainly right now, we know that there are lots of external factors outside of organizations that are affecting people. Cost of living is one of those things. You know, it's a difficult world to live in. And actually, we shouldn't expect people, just because they are working within a charity or not-for-profit sector, to have the same, you know, a better or different resilience to any other person in any other organization. So doing that is still really important to support people and to make sure that people are managing their work-life balances correctly and taking care of themselves. Now, the challenge with charity is that because there is a cause, there is a motivation and a pull to do more, because certainly in my organization, there's some life and death attached to the work that we do. So there is a pull to always do more and more, because it matters to the people you're servicing and you're supporting. And so there has to be balance in that as well, because it is only so much hours in a day. There is so much you can do. And actually, the lens on a not-for-profit organization is different to a commercial organization. Nobody cares really in a commercial organization, except shareholders and stockholders, what you spend your money on. But for a charity, everybody cares what you spend your money from. And there are some misconceptions and preconceptions around, you know, how charities run and how charities are organized. And so, you know, when we invest in our people, we do that with real care and consideration, because the money we use to do that is money not going elsewhere.
Absolutely. That's fundamentally important. Absolutely. Okay. And you've been in the role, I think, since October 21, so a couple of years.
Absolutely.
Now. And so kind of, I think the role's been shaping. Why did the organisation decide to make the shift from perhaps a classic HR or human resources function to a people and culture function, and how's that kind of rolled into the role that you've been playing on a day-to-day basis?
Sure.
Sherie?
And for me, this organisation has sort of preempted what it needed to have in the future almost. So it's an organisation that's growing. It's growing quite rapidly as well, and it wanted to make some key shifts into being an organisation that had sustainability, an organisation that treated its people well and respected its people. But also wanted to make sure that it didn't lose some of the culture that it had that made it successful. And we know that many charities did not survive the sort of pandemic years. And so this organization did and came out pretty well out of the back of that. So what made that happen? How do we keep hold of that sort of, I guess, secret sauce? But equally understand that a growing organization goes through growing pains, and many organizations also do not succeed doing that transition into a bigger organization. So bringing this role on board was to help that transition happen. So making sure that we held on to the stuff that made us work and really successful, but we also had an eye in the future and sustainability too. So it was really sort of a good foresight of this organization to do it now, before we got too far down the path where we had to unpick lots of stuff. And that's often in an HR role, you have to unpick lots of things because there are intrinsic and institutionalized behaviors and practices around HR. I'm really sort of setting the scene out to say that we wanted to do some things differently. And this was the best time. We're on a cusp of change in the organization. So this is the best time to start doing those behaviors and practices better.
I love that. So some of that preemptive work and building those transformational aspects of people and culture to help drive and sustain growth and sustainability within the organization.
Absolutely.
Cultures, which is so progressive. And like I said, with real foresight. Maybe could you share, Sherie, some examples of the work that you've been doing over the last couple of years?
Yeah, sure. So as with any new role, a lot of that sort of the first year is just really finding your feet and trying to understand, okay, what do I do, and don't break stuff. So don't break the things that are working by coming in. Temper some of your enthusiasm, because a new role, you want to do loads of different things, and you can see where you can add value and make a difference, and sort of making sure that you're not trying to you're not sort of overwhelming people with new stuff. And also getting to understand kind of the culture of the organization first, because you can't change culture until you understand the existing culture. So therefore, understanding how things work, how the level of people's abilities and competencies in the organization, and then being able to put things in place to build on those things and improve those things, rather than wholesale changes. Because you don't want to come in with a new broom to sweep things clean. You want to just build on all the really good things that are already happening. So for me, it's more it's more subtle stuff. So it's not sort of coming in with really big programs of work, because we're a busy organization and we're quite a small organization and we've got lots to do. So you don't want to distract people with lots of change. You want to make sure that change filters into the programs of work that we're doing. And you also want to do changes where change needs to happen. So for me, some of the things that I did is look at our processes and policies and say, okay, are we restricting people's autonomy and ability to work by making them jump through lots of hoops and barriers to get things done? Are we creating a pathway to the HR function so that HR has to sign off everything that goes in the organization, and therefore the HR function is under sort of siege almost in terms of doing that, and is almost failing as a result of doing that? So creating processes and policies that give back autonomy to managers. So managers have the responsibility and discretion to make some of those decisions within a framework of working, enabling and giving permissions back to managers to do that. So, I don't have to make all the decisions in the organization to do with people. I really don't want to do that. I want to empower others to do that. or within a framework of making sure people are being treated with equity and sort of fairness. So putting in some of those processes and policies and rejigging some of the ways of working that we do. And it's been quite interesting because often people ask for more freedom and autonomy. And when you give it to them, they're like, oh no,
I want rules, I want structure.
About making a mistake. And I'm like, you might make a mistake, but you know, we can help you fix that mistake. So I think it's trying to help people really embrace that sort of more wider autonomy and giving them more parameters to play in, rather than being restrictive and prescriptive in the way that we deliver people related activities.
Amazing. I was listening to Amy Edmondson, the author of obviously the Fearless Organisation and the Right Kind, the Wrong conference on Monday this week, talking about this exact point, Sherie, and how it's important that we create these pathways and frameworks within organisations to support managers and others, employees and others, in terms of creating intelligent failure and learning from those mistakes. And one of the issues, I think, you've described HR as a powerhouse of change and an enabler of growth and sustainability. I think this to me speaks to this strategic function that the people functions continuing to play. But sometimes people have looked to HR to have the rule book.
Yeah.
And sometimes that rule book has become just a wee bit adversarial and retributive, and sometimes failure is subject to punishment. And people have got very used to that rule book. And actually, when we take that away and start to empower and give people autonomy, yes, it's very powerful, but it also can be quite nerve-wracking. And in there is a gap. The gap is around competency and confidence to fill the gap. I just wonder how you filled that gap within the work that you've done to support managers so they don't feel they're just being cut free.
Cut free to run around and
exactly. And they go, great. How have you managed that part of that autonomy?
Yeah, so I agree that often in the past you sort of policies are written so that for the exceptions. So the person that might might fall over, the person that might try to game the system, the person that might break the rule, and policies have been written to sort of ensure that doesn't happen. So they're quite and quite directive and pinpointy. And you know, so we've worked with our managers to sort of help them to understand that they're not going to get in trouble if things go wrong. We'll help rectify that as well. But it's a bit of an experiment. So let's try this. Let's see how this works for you. And we will, you know, for some managers, they're really confident and competent about doing that. And so let's just let them go and get on with things and don't try and restrict them. And for other managers, you understand that they need a little bit more handhold, and there's some steps in between before you let them, you know, they feel confident to have to make that step change. And you have to do a little bit of you know, it's no one size fits all. There are different ways to do it, and recognizing when people do need help and guidance and coaching to get to that place. But I think it's also about not making it you know, you're in trouble if you don't do this, manager environment, because if you fear getting things wrong so much, you fear then stepping out of the guidelines because you worry that there's a repercussion for you. And of course, we work in the world where there are repercussions if an organization gets things wrong. I have certain other views around that, and I think that often defines why we do policies. But equally, if you're helping managers to understand that you're on their side and you're working with them, and you're not going to sort of, you know, make them feel really bad and wrong for getting, you know, the thing. If they're trying and they're trying their best, you encourage that sort of positive reinforcement that, okay, if we have this example again, or this particular issue again, we would look at doing this slightly differently because now it's caused you this amount of issue or challenge. So I think it's a softly approach with some firmness around, okay, here is why we do things, not what we do, but why we do them.
And kind of, it's an interesting, because you're talking about the sort of, again, when I've reflected on this, is sort of often in HR, there's lagging indicators. What's gone wrong? Why has it gone wrong? Who's to blame? And there's leading indicators, which is learning and insight, continuous improvement, growth, development, relationships, dialogue, all of those different aspects. And it sounds like you're bringing in a real focus on those leading indicators from an HR function, which takes us away from that old rule book of the past,
Yeah.
the history, the rights, the wrongs, the who's to blame, so on and so forth. And it's interesting. How are managers responding to that, Sherie? What kind of reaction do you find from people when you're introducing this slightly new, well, not slightly new, very new for some approach to HR?
It's mixed, because people have been almost indoctrinated, and it's ingrained that you have to come to the HR function to ask for permission to do it, everything. And so, that sort of behavior doesn't dissipate overnight. You have to help people to really breathe into it and understand that it's okay. You've got this, it's okay. And for some people, the rules work. So I need the rule. I need that process and policy, because, it helps, gives me clarity. My style and my approach is to help people to understand why we need to do things more, and contextualize the reason why we do things. And also to maybe, color outside the lines slightly anyway, because I think, people being people, if there was one size and one solution, we'd all be out of a job and it'd just be a book. So there is no one size fits all. Sometimes you do have to sort of you have to understand the risks, and you have to know what the consequences are, and then work back from that to say, okay, how far can I push this to make it pragmatic and practical and personable?
I love that, though. Starting with the why is so important, because oftentimes we focused on the what. Not even necessarily clearly on the what, but very much on the how. And I think focus on the why. So thank you. So you're listening to the People and Culture Essentials live streaming videocast here today. We've got Sherie Holding, Director of People and Culture from Pancreatic Cancer UK, sharing her experiences and wisdom in relation to the development of a people and culture function in her work for the last 2 years. And we're talking about some of the different aspects and facets that builds up and makes up that people and culture function. And I'm kind of curious, Sherie, from your own personal perspective, what kind of keeps you going? What keeps you interested and motivated in this space that you're working in? What's the story behind some of the policies?
Yeah, so for me, I always think that we should always be treating people like adults, and that's always been my approach. It hasn't mattered where I've been, whether it's commercial or whether it's for not-for-profit. I think that treating people as adults, and sometimes the complexities of doing that is interesting as well, because you think people are going to go to the left of something and they go completely to the right. You're like, oh, I didn't expect that, and how would I look at that or do that differently if I was having this again? It's to empower people, and I really get a buzz and motivated when you see the potential in someone sort of bear fruit, and you see someone rise and fly and go and do bigger and better things, and exceed your expectations. And when you see people do that, I think that just motivates me. So you're always continuously motivated, because there's always people doing that, and of course there are days where you think, why did I choose this particular discipline? It's really, really, everyone's ungrateful. I spend my time wading through misery and mayhem. But even in that, when you find solutions and when you find the way forward and you can see where you can add value, for me, what motivates me is the ability to make a difference, make a change, and add value. And certainly in the role that I'm in right now, that's in abundance. I can see the impact that I'm having in the organization and with the people that sit in the organization. And it's to change the perception of the sort of people activities in HR as well, that we're not police, we're not austere, we're not sort of overly formal and tell people. We are people with personalities, we are people with humor, we are people who have issues and challenges of our own as well. We're not robots that just function and deliver policy, that actually we have personalities within that as well.
I'm just going to let some of that settle in, make an impact, make a difference, be human, connecting with people, bringing your own self in and helping others to do so. These are powerful messages, and people sometimes talk to me, what does that mean, that human in HR? What does that mean? I think you're talking about bringing that humanity into the workplace. And I would imagine, and I'll frame it as a question, now that starts to build trust in the HR function, in the people function. And people often say to me, one of the challenges that they faced is there's a skepticism and a cynicism, and sometimes they say it, a lack of trust in HR. What would you say to people who are experiencing that, Sherie? What advice might you give to people who want to transform their role, but they're kind of stuck in a bit of a rut and they want to build trust, they want to build engagement, they want to have that kind of relationship? What advice would you give to other practitioners in the people space?
I think it's actually being honest yourself, because I think often, and I know that probably earlier in my career, it was about sort of trying to make people happy. So not telling people the stuff they should be hearing, but trying to tell people the stuff that I thought would make them happy and not be mad at me, basically. And that always backfires because you get caught out. And so therefore it's the honesty and transparency of how you deliver something. So definitely within the HR function, you have to deliver some pretty, not great messages, and sometimes really, really horrible messages. But if you sort of try and fudge it or hide them, and you're not transparent about them, then people lose faith in you, because you lose your credibility. Now, if you set your stall out and you tell people, I will always tell you when it's the bad stuff, but I'll also tell you when it's the good stuff, then they know when you're telling them whatever it is, you're not sort of trying to be doom and gloom and misery, but that you'll also rely to do the good stuff. With my team, I always say it's about being there when you're not needed, as well as being there when you are needed. So presenting a really positive front of the function that helps and enables the organization to be successful, not just being the department where people come when things go wrong. And so that's an active role in the organization. It's that business partnering model that says, understand your organization, don't be the hurdle that stops the organization doing things, building good relationships with managers and peers and leaders to say, I'm here when you don't need me and I can contribute in a different way. And I'm also here when you do need me. And so therefore you trust me to give you honesty when you need it. I don't know if I'm through. Oh, sorry.
I don't know if that was my end or your end there.
Yeah, not sure.
I'm very, very sorry about it. So apologies to everyone if there was a bit of a glitch there. But I think what you're saying is need to be there when you do need me and don't need me. And that's about building partnering, about being part of this sort of bigger conversation within the organization, and presenting the HR function as an enabler within the organization, as well as being there for the tough times. I just wondered if there's anything that you've done within this current role or previous roles, whether it's at St John Ambulance or in any other organisations, that sort of highlight that particular function, particularly the bit around being there when you don't need me. I'm really interested in that. Any examples of work or successes that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, so I think it's about really understanding the organisation outside of the function. So understanding how the organisation works, and so in a more commercial setting, it's understanding, how the business earns its money, how the business spends its money, and sometimes HR and finance don't often worked well together. So it's understanding the money side of the organization and and what products or services the organization delivers, so that when you are contributing, you're not just talking about the people aspect of the organization, you're contributing to the broader discussion of the organization. And then also, how does this now impact the people? How do we enable people to deliver and be engaged in the delivery of that? And this is where I play a part. So I think it's not just being, so it's not just talking about the people stuff, it's talking about the organization as a whole and understanding all the different components of the organization. And I think that means that you're able to talk about things that when people in a different context and a different perspective.
As we kind of come to the end of 2023 and start thinking about 2024, what are some of the big drivers for you looking ahead over the next 12 months, Sherie, to build on the work that you've been doing so far in the role?
Yeah, I think for me, it's about there's a real shift around what external to organizations, it impacts internally in organizations,
Yeah,
and it's a real shift about flexibility. There's a real shift about
yeah,
transparency and helping people feel engaged in different ways. Hybrid working has
yeah,
definitely sort of changed lots of people's worlds, and finding different ways to work where you're not necessarily seeing people, but the impact on people's well-being and mental health and emotional health is being impacted by sometimes not being in the office and not having that
mm,
support network around you. The remote working creating some isolation issues. So that for me
yeah,
is really a big thing around how do we keep the organization cohesive and
yeah.
running, but still offer that level of different ways of working to suit different needs.
Fantastic. So that's kind of really tapping into that flexibility, the
Yeah.
hybrid working, and supporting that. And I think looking ahead, do you? And I suppose I suppose it sounds like it might be an innate part of your role, but
Mm.
seeing the people and culture function feeding into the wider business strategy. I
Oh,
just wondered if you've got
absolutely.
any thoughts about how you're doing that and how you might see that role emerging. So we've talked about the role of the manager, we've talked
Sure.
about the function of HR and people functions, creating that space where it's there when you don't need me as much as you do. Can we
Yeah.
talk about that sort of strategic, longer term planning and work that you're doing as
Yeah.
a
So
director?
it's a really interesting thing. I've been on a number of webinars and podcasts recently. And they talk about empathy and compassion
Yes.
and how that's a really big part of moving forward. One of the things I found frustrating is the link that we always have to make, and it's the same with diversity and inclusion,
Yeah.
is that the way that we sell that in is through the bottom line. And saying, okay, we have to make people realize that it costs money not to do these things. And I
Yeah.
think it's old hat. I think aren't we past that by now? And
Mm,
shouldn't we be talking to people about doing things because they're the right things to do, and this makes good practice to look after people, not just because it's the bottom line. And certainly in the not-for-profit world, we don't
yeah.
consider bottom line like that. So
No.
it's not a motivator for us to do things. We do it because it's the right thing to do. So part of my world going forward, to answer your question, is really to embed in our strategy that looking after our people and
Yeah.
making sure our people are cared for and are resilient to
Yeah.
the stuff that's going on outside of the organization is a key part of delivering our strategy. And we do have that strand in our strategy right now that's about transforming the way that we work and transforming our people, so giving our people that ability. And it's a massive focus in our organization, so it holds equal billing to all the other strategy strands as well. And so yeah, I'm immensely proud of that, because it doesn't always happen, and sometimes you have to fight for it. But
Yeah.
equally having that sort of lens on people are, it's that adage that people are your biggest asset. It is
Yeah.
definitely true in the charity sector. People are your biggest asset. So often you don't have a service, you don't have a product, you don't have nuts and bolts to sell. Your people deliver your work. So if you aren't taking care of them, you're not doing a good job as an organization. And that for me is
Right.
really key to driving strategy in my organization.
Wow, I love that. I mean, that is putting people first and then some, isn't it? It's absolutely front and center. And it's really interesting, the point that you're making about you can't measure this as a bottom line return on investment cost benefit analysis. This is compassion, empathy,
Yeah.
humane for the benefit of doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Right, do absolutely, and we keep justifying it by saying, make it linked to the money, make it linked to the income, make it linked to the cost of your organization. All that's true, but that's just distilling it down to pounds and pence, and actually it's
Yeah.
about people.
And you can't distill people down to those pounds and pence. But the paradox, to an extent, it is a paradox, is as we do the right thing and we treat people well and create that compassionate, flexible space, actually people do perform that little bit better, and you do start to see a benefit. It's almost, how do you persuade I guess it might be different in the charity sector. You've worked in the private and the charity sector, so I'd be interested to know from your perspective, how do you convince people who perhaps are concerned about balance sheets and P&L and finance, like you say, going to be less the case in charities, although many charities are run as businesses, they have a very clear business focus. How do you convince people who are concerned about such matters as balance sheets that this is the right way to go?
And so there is it's strategic, it's long-term thinking, isn't saying that out over time, an organization that works more efficiently, so doesn't lose its people, retains its people, trains its people, you will see that manifest in its bottom line. So it's knowing your numbers as well. You have to know your numbers, but it shouldn't be the reason why you do things as well. So for me, if you're convincing somebody who is about the bottom line, you're going to be seeing turnover in stuff, you're going to be seeing dissatisfaction in surveys, you're going to be seeing, there'll be an undercurrent of dissatisfaction in the organization anyway, and means that we'll just lose people quicker. So again, it's about understanding how that plays into the finances, so you can speak to that, but not using that as the stick to beat people with to do stuff. So you see a lot in D&I work is that, the reason why you should have diversity in your organization is because it's good for your bottom line, and that means that it's a really superficial and shallow intent. Actually, you should be doing it because it's just better for you as an organization to have different perspectives with different cultures and ways of being in the organization.
Wow. Thank you. Such powerful messages, Sherie. Thank you so much. So the charitable sector hasn't always been immune from some of this stuff that we see coming on around toxic cultures and bad leadership behaviours, and we can see many international NGOs have struggled, as have other organisations. So sometimes this comes down to leadership behaviours, and one of the challenges I think we've seen within the HR space in the past, and certainly I've seen this in some places, is people's perception is that HR kind of protects the leaders to a little extent, but we're seeing a real shift now. We're seeing a shift in the way we hold our leaders to account, and the people and culture function plays a really central role in creating those behaviours and helping to hold leaders to account and for them to hold each other to account. And I just wonder, within your work, again, we've talked about managers, we talked about employees, now we talked about various aspects. How do you create that space whereby the people and culture function is building into this sort of governance and accountability framework where our leaders and others within the organisations are expected to behave in a way which is aligned to the core values, the principles, the purpose of the organisation? Did you have any thoughts around behaviours, particularly when we're talking at board level, where we've seen some challenges, let's be honest?
So that's an interesting one, and I think and certainly coming into an organisation where people and culture wasn't really represented at that sort of board level and at least senior leadership level, is having to carve a space really in order to do that and say this stuff is really important. I think for me, one of the first things I did was look at, we weren't doing much training and educating our people about some of the governance parts of our organization. So that bit sort of was left to the finance and the HR functions to kind of carry and cover. But actually, I feel governance is everyone's business. It's not just our business, and it's leadership's accountability as well. So introducing a set of mandatory training and saying, okay, everyone needs to understand why we do this, so that when we say don't do these things, safeguarding is involved in that as well, health and safety. When we say don't do these things, people understand why we're saying that, and it's not my responsibility to make sure that you don't do it. It's your responsibility to make sure you don't do it, and the leaders have accountability to that. So I think a couple of times I had to explain the definition of mandatory a couple of times, that says you got to do it. And then also, talk to our wider leadership team and our senior leadership team about it's not my job to chase you to do these things. I can, if you want me to do that, I can. I say stickety carrot and carroty stick, and there's versions of carrots and sticks at each end. And I said, I would rather not do any of those things, because I'd rather you understand that this is your accountability for the organization is your accountability, not mine. So understand your role. and in helping to bring that to life, we're put in a competency framework that looks at the different levels in the organization and really brings to life, okay, you know, at this level, we would expect you to hold the accountability for these things. It is not anyone else's job to chase you, to remind you that this is accountability. It's a work in progress because we're still quite a young organization. And so therefore we have to build that sort of maturity into the organization. But it's just helping people to understand accountability and responsibility in that rests across a broad set of people, not just one person.
I think that's really interesting. And do you feel you're making progress carving out that space into that compliance and governance arena?
I think some of it is, you know, I've had to explain what people and culture is a couple of times. And I think the definition of that is that, you know, for me, it's not HR transactional, because that's kind of where I was sort of positioned for a while, is that it's the transactional side of HR. Well, then, you know, that's my team that does a lot of that stuff. For me, it's about this shift in how we operate as an organization in holistically as well. So, you know, it is a work in progress, but actually I've got some really great peers in my team who are really open to hearing what I have to say. And so there's that fight isn't always, so in other organizations, sometimes that's a fight, you know, and they will say seat at the table and whatnot. I definitely have a seat at the table, and I definitely have my voice listened to in my organization.
Wow, Sherie, I think there's probably going to be a lot of people listening to today's People and Culture Essentials videocast taking real inspiration from what you're saying and feeling very motivated by what you're saying as well, because I think you're painting a picture of a people function, an HR function, which has a significant strategic impact within the organization, has a clear voice, has real meaning, real purpose, creating that humanizing environment, supporting managers and leaders to be the best version of themselves, to help your people to thrive and to grow. And I'm not doing this for bottom line benefits. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. But we can measure the impact on that. And I guess that does lead me to a question. If you know, we don't want to talk about bottom line impact. That's not what it's about. But how do you define the impact now of the modern people professional? If we're all striving for notions of value, and what does that really mean in a modern workplace? How do you define your own impact and the impact of the people profession as you see it, Sherie?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned earlier about that not-for-profits has had its share of problems, and you know, it's not immune to sort of toxic cultures and environments. And I always think that happens when you take your foot off the gas and you stop paying attention, because it half the time it's not intentional and it's not a defined or purposeful intent. It's when you aren't paying attention. So for me, part of this world is about, you know, listening to your people, giving people the opportunity to tell you kind of what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and then taking action as a result of that. Constant temperature check-in. So you do have to check, because what was good last week isn't good next week, because something else will have shifted, another factor has shifted. So if I take, for example, you know, the recent events in the world affairs at the moment, it shifts the dialogue, it shifts the barometer slightly as to how you support people in your organization, because they've been affected by something massive outside of the organization. So I think it's taking into consideration what goes on outside, and also learning from peers and colleagues. So stuff like this, where you're learning from different peers and other people doing great things in different organizations, you can take that with you, and then you sort of measure yourself against that. I think for me, there's something around, and I came into an organization that had very few employee relation issues. So the barometer for me is that if they start to go up, it might be something that I'm doing. But if they stay quite low, then I'm actually maintaining a great culture while doing some other pieces and growing it. So the impact of what I'm doing is not having a negative impact on the environment that our people are operating in. I think in other roles I've been quite distanced because of the level of role I've been operating at. Because it's still quite a small organization, I know who's in our organization. I can talk to anyone in our organization, and there's no hierarchy in as much as tell us how you feel, tell us what you think, tell us if we're getting things wrong, give us that level of feedback, and we won't sort of drop a ton of bricks on you and tell you you're wrong and know your place and know your station. Actually consider your views. And so that sort of feedback, that softer sort of feedback, right? Of course, you have your metrics in place and looking at your short-term and your long-term goals and what you're hoping to achieve as from a strategic perspective.
Yeah, and just to kind of come into that, just be a bit devil's advocate for you, that is employee relations, Sherie. That's a very modern form of employee relations. But that's the employee relations which has strategic value. It's an enabler. It's creating a space for people to speak up, for their voices to be heard, to be listened, and where you, as a people and culture director, are supporting managers and leaders and others to have those powerful conversations. I think sometimes we've thought about ER cases as being the discipline cases, the grievance. But I think what excites me about the way that you're talking is you're breaking through those old, tired and somewhat dreary paradigms of ER and HR and so on and so forth. You're breaking those apart, and you're actually saying this is a space we're creating for people to come together and have powerful conversations. That is employee relations. So actually, you've got a wonderful employee relations landscape. It's just not measured in terms of case management, number of grievances and investigations. But that's yesterday's news. That's the old news. The big news, the new news, is about how you create those powerful spaces for transformation, agility, learning and growth. And that is employee relations in 2023/24 style. So I was hearing what you were saying. I know that to me makes a big difference, and I just wanted to share. That's my
it really does. And I think one of our values in my organization is compassion, and I have a real sort of strong belief around compassion and empathy, and saying that often in the world of HR we get driven down pathways that don't feel that nice to the people that you're doing it to. So an example of that is the way that we write letters and the way that we write policies sometimes, that makes us feel happy because we've buttoned it, we've covered our backsides in all of our policy and our letters. But for the person going through the process, it's a horrible process because it feels cold, it feels formal, it feels like you don't really care about me as an individual. And so certainly in most things, especially in sort of disciplinaries, they rarely end in dismissals. So you still have a person in your organization who's disenchanted and demotivated. So why do that to somebody? Why not try? And, you do have to deal with issues, absolutely, but deal with it in a way that's compassionate and humane at the same time. And make them not feel that they've got nowhere else to go but sort of out of the organization.
Yeah, it's brilliant. A lot of the work that I do and colleagues do is about developing these integrated people policies, Sherie, where we put the person at the centre, we have the values and also the rules at the centre as well. These are really important, and then build out frameworks and removing some of these sort of old-fashioned and old-style systems. It sounds like you're very much on that journey, because ultimately no one wins. And as you said, it may not result in a dismissal, but it is going to result in an unhappy, demotivated individual. And actually that almost creates the very problem that we were trying to solve. And in some respects, if the policy is there to drive, to create environments for us to thrive, it's the antithesis of this. And I think the challenge for many in HR is they've been seen to be the custodians of those processes, which have almost had the opposite or the antithesis of what they were there to do. And I love the fact you're challenging that and bringing that fresh thinking into those sort of traditional spaces. Well, Sherie, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. We spoke earlier about you were very much on brand today with all of the colours. Where are we speaking to you from? Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about where you are.
I'm in my house in Peterborough. So I say it's to the sort of the right-hand side of the country, and it's a good place to go to other parts of the country to and from. And I do sort of commute into London quite a lot. I think I've bemused my colleagues because it is Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and Pancreatic Cancer awareness is purple. It does coincide that purple is one of my favorite colors, so it's not hard for me to find purple stuff to wear, but I have committed to wearing purple every day of this month because I'm supporting the cause and supporting that. If you notice, even my hair is
notice that, yeah,
purple. So
really
I am that person that fully commits to something, and so you know, I do think about there is a more serious tone to this, where I think that, you know, you immerse your employees in your brand. Your brand is what you stand for as an organization, and so that you know, all those buzzwords about employee brand and internal brand and internal advocacy and all those things, you know, but actually it's not hard in a charity to get people on brand, because there's a big heart with most people, and the cause is the beating heart of the organization. But then when you take that the next step forward around, you know, what does it mean and feel to be a part of our organization? For me, it's purple. So purple is what it means to me, and I'm really happy to wear the colours, and I would wear any other colour, you know, the push, but yeah, so you know, and that's for me. I am super excited about, you know, the landscape of people and culture, from my little sort of dining room, which is where I'm sitting at the moment, and when I go into the organisation, it is what I talk about all the time, and making that difference, and helping people to you know, be authentic. I get to be authentic. I get to have purple hair in my organization without anyone sort of telling me that I don't look professional or I don't look a certain way. So I get to do that, and that's kind of the ideal, that everyone can do that in any organization, that they can bring their true self to the table.
Wow, what fantastic words to end today's videocast on. Sherie, it's been such a pleasure, and I just wonder, as you're looking ahead over the next few months, is there anything that you've got bubbling away, any work that you're doing that you'd like to share, or anything?
Yeah, so I talked about the competency framework earlier, and I want to I'm doing more work to bring that to life, and to support our managers to really have those really impactful and nuanced conversations with their team, and talk to them about career progression and how they can enhance and develop within our organization. A part of that is, you know, is that adage that managers are key to the success of any organization. And so looking at how we develop and grow our managers and give them the skills to manage in today's environment. So the skills you needed yesterday and 10 years ago are kind of what evolved and moved forward, with remote management, hybrid working, and well-being and mental health being in the mix. So really giving our managers those skill sets and abilities to manage change, and to be more agile and able to move with the times. So that's what my next sort of focus is on, is well-being and management development.
And real toolkits to support that, to have them practical. And I think that's been such a clear message woven through our videocast today. Sherie Holding, thank you so much for being part of today's videocast. I've enjoyed speaking with you so much. And there's a few things I'd just like to say as we wrap up. So we at TCM Group and PCA, we have a small it's only a small project. You talked about heart is TCM, TCM being French for heart and love, TCM. So we'd like, under our sort of social value initiative, to make a small donation to Pancreatic Cancer UK.
Thank you very much.
Afterwards, just by way of saying thank you for joining us, Sherie. I'm writing a book at the moment called People and Culture, and I'd love to talk with you, Sherie, some more about that, and maybe shining a light on some of the practices that you've been developing. I'll be talking about the role of the Chief People Officer, be talking about the role of competency frameworks and behaviours and values. So I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. So perhaps that's something we could pick up if you'd be happy to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm in deep research mode at the moment for Kogan Page, so that'll be coming out in May 2025, called People and Culture. People might have seen flashing on the screen. The logo for the International People and Culture Week is on the 1st of May 2024. We're developing an inaugural international development board. There's the logo up there now. So please watch out for more space as it's coming through from the People and Culture Association. And the idea of People and Culture Week is to support people like yourself, Sherie, who are doing the work and making it happen in your organizations and making that magic happen. So we're going to be developing toolkits and packs and information packs to help people and culture professionals to really shine this amazing light on the work that they're doing in their own organization. So if anyone's interested in finding out more or being part of People and Culture Week, please do let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And Sherie, you also talked about the challenges in the challenges is an understatement in the Middle East at the moment. Obviously, our thoughts are very much with the people of Gaza and Israel at this really difficult time. And Jonathan launched a poll on LinkedIn yesterday, just inviting people to reflect on what we can be doing at the People and Culture Association to open up a dialogue and a discourse about world challenges such as the Middle East conflict, and how we at the PCA can open up a discourse and a dialogue around those. We'd love to hear from people who can let us know what we can be doing to open up a conversation, because we know it's a big conversation, but many, I think, are fearful and trepidatious about dipping into it. And I think it's a conversation that we probably need to have. So for those of you who are listening, please do find the People and Culture Association on LinkedIn, and please do let us have your views on the survey that's been opened looking at a discourse around the Middle East conflict and how that impacts on our workplaces and on our important work as people and culture professionals. So thank you very much for everyone who has been part of the live stream today, and for those of you who are watching on record, thank you for being part of today's People and Culture Essentials videocast. It's great to have you here, but I'd like to say once again, Sherie, a massive thank you from everyone at the People and Culture Association for sparing your time so generously and sharing such a fantastic array of insights, experiences and wisdom. And I'm pretty confident people have been scribbling away and hopefully take away some very practical tools to help them drive up their work within the organisation. So Sherie, on behalf of everyone from the PCA, thank you very much indeed, and have a lovely weekend. Thank you. Have a lovely weekend, and look forward to seeing you at our next People and Culture Essentials videocast. And a final thank you, Jonathan, as always, who just makes stuff happen. Jonathan Rodriguez, the coordinator of the People and Culture Association. Jonathan, thank you to you. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And